My downward spiral began with pure desperation. At 26, I was barely surviving in this dilapidated apartment above a seedy pawn shop in Dayton. Every time the wind picked up, those ancient radiators would start their cat-like hissing while frigid air seeped through the window frames. The logistics company I dispatched for had kicked me to the curb after shipping my position to some facility down in Arizona. Nothing personal, they claimed, just a numbers game. Always is. The next 4 months, I cobbled together whatever work I could find. Temporary gigs. Watching people's pets. Unloading random possessions on Facebook. Must have submitted applications to 100 different places. Everything from grocery stores to office work to overnight shelf-stocking positions. Nothing ever panned out. Most places didn't even bother sending rejections, just ghosted me completely. That silence eats at you when you're broke, like the universe is whispering that you've become irrelevant. One particularly dark November evening, I hunched over my damaged kitchen table, the blue glow from my laptop screen casting shadows across the otherwise pitch-black room. I was searching for quick money-making schemes when I stumbled onto a forum where folks shared their side hustle stories. Some guy from Boston swore by mystery shopping, easy cash that was almost enjoyable, he claimed. I clicked his link, landing on a Craigslist posting seeking Ohio mystery shoppers. The ad promised flexible scheduling, required just email access and transportation, with payouts between $35 to $50 per assignment. No startup costs. Immediate openings. It reeked of a potential scam, but my options had dried up completely. I sent an email anyway. Within 60 minutes, someone named Rachel Gardner replied from a Gmail account. Her message seemed legitimate enough, full of corporate jargon with a basic PDF attachment outlining instructions and a form requesting my contact details, PayPal email, and availability. I completed everything and submitted it. The following morning, my first task appeared in my inbox: evaluate an employee at Lakeview Market, a grocery chain I knew well. This specific location sat about 15 minutes away in a quieter neighborhood. The directions seemed simple enough: enter between 6 to 8 p.m., observe the worker stationed in aisle 4, canned goods section, request help finding tuna, then fill out their customer interaction form. She stressed maintaining anonymity, never revealing my secret shopper status. Reports needed submission within 2 hours for payment. The job seemed straightforward enough. I'd actually been on the receiving end during my high school retail days. We all used to whisper about these mystery shoppers like they were some kind of urban myth, with everyone competing over who had perfected their greeting plus eye contact routine. At 6:17, I entered Lakeview Market wearing my faded black hoodie, taking deliberate shallow breaths to steady my nerves like I was some undercover operative. The place reeked of industrial cleaner and fruit past its prime. I casually wandered the store, trying not to look suspicious. Aisle 4 stood eerily quiet. The only employee there was this skinny guy, probably mid-20s, with light brown hair and sunken cheeks. His worn red vest had James embroidered on it. He was mechanically stacking cans with that vacant stare I remembered from my own late shifts. I lingered by the end cap, pretending to read some discount flyer, before approaching him. "Hey, sorry to interrupt. Could you point me toward the canned tuna?" He didn't even look up. "Middle of the aisle, left side," he muttered flatly, still stocking shelves. No eye contact, no proper greeting, not even offering to show me, just a vague wave of his hand. "Thanks," I replied, hovering nearby, hoping he might salvage his evaluation with some closing remark. Nothing came. "Have a good night," I finally added just to wrap things up. He briefly glanced upward then, eyes dull and slightly bloodshot. "You too," he mumbled, then just stared. I quickly typed, "James," in my phone notes and turned to leave. As I moved down the next aisle, that unmistakable sensation crept over me, the same feeling when you're walking alone after dark and sense someone following. I glanced behind me. James was watching from the edge of the aisle. I kept moving. Every section I visited afterward, I spotted him again, sometimes near the fruits and vegetables, sometimes lurking by the dairy coolers. Not exactly following me, just standing there, watching. By checkout time, sweat had soaked through my hoodie. The cashier, a cheerful college student named Tara, easily passed her secret shopper evaluation with a proper greeting, eye contact, and a bubbly, "Enjoy your evening." I forced a smile, nodded, and hurried out. I rushed to my car, fired up the engine, then sat with the interior light on, typing my report while details remained fresh. I noted James' failed interaction, no greeting, minimal assistance, barely any eye contact. While typing, a shadow passed across my windshield. I went rigid. It was James, storming through the parking lot with heavy footsteps. Though he didn't look directly at my vehicle, he passed uncomfortably close, heading toward an old black sedan parked nearby. He peeled out of that lot so fast his tires squealed. I watched his taillights disappear, my heart pounding. Then I finally drove home. By morning, a $40 PayPal deposit had arrived along with another assignment. Life moved forward. 3 nights later, I was relaxing at my boyfriend Drew's duplex across town. We were eating Chinese takeout on his couch watching Whose Line Is It Anyway reruns. His dog Mako slept at our feet, legs twitching as he chased something in his dreams. Around 11:40 that night, there was a pounding at the door. Not a knock, a violent slam. Then another and another. Drew hit pause on the TV. We locked eyes. Mako jumped up, a low growl rumbling in his throat. "Who the hell?" Drew muttered, heading to the window. I followed close behind. We peeked through the blinds, and my stomach dropped to my feet. It was James. Same hoodie, same haunted eyes, but worse now, like he hadn't slept in days. He paced the porch, mumbling to himself, then hammered his fists against our door again. I staggered backward. Drew cracked the storm door window. "Hey man, you need to get out of here right now." James didn't move an inch. He just slammed the door again and yelled, "I know what you did! You ruined everything! What the hell is this guy talking about?" Drew whispered. I couldn't answer. My mouth felt like sandpaper. My heart pounded so hard I felt the pulse in my fingertips. "I told you I was already on my last chance!" James shouted. "Then you walk in asking for fucking tuna like you're better than me!" Drew pulled me behind him and grabbed his phone. I nodded frantically. "Call the cops." James kept screaming, his voice breaking. "You cost me my job! You got me fired! You think you can just stroll into my store and destroy my life? You think you're safe? There's always an eye for an eye." He started throwing his weight against the door. The wood splintered. Mako barked wildly, tail tucked, ears flattened. I clutched Drew's arm. "He must have followed me that night. There's no other way he could know where I am." "Ship," Drew whispered, phone pressed to his ear. The dispatcher stayed on the line. Less than 2 minutes later, police lights flashed across our walls. When the cruisers pulled up, James bolted, but an officer tackled him in the yard. Drew and I watched frozen as they cuffed him. Mako's growls turned to whimpers. During the pat-down, an officer pulled a folding knife from James' waistband. That's when I started shaking uncontrollably. Later, the detective handling our case filled me in. Timothy James Weber had worked at Lakeview for almost 2 years. He had multiple write-ups and was already on probation for failing another secret shopper report. The night I showed up, his girlfriend had dumped him. His car failed inspection, and he was behind on rent. He wasn't just having a bad day. He was at his breaking point. My report had cost him his job. That much was certain. But here's what still haunts me. I never used my real name on any shopper forms. My email was just a burner account. No connections to my actual life. So how did he track me down? How did he know I was the secret shopper? How did he find Drew's address? One theory: security cameras. Maybe he reviewed footage afterward and saw me writing notes in my car. Maybe he tailed me without me noticing. Maybe he jotted down my plate number and knew someone who could trace it. I'll never know for sure. What I do know is I never secret shopped again. I turned down every assignment after that. Eventually landed a steady job at a call center and tried to forget the whole thing. Drew installed security cameras. We moved a few months later, just to be safe. But sometimes when I'm shopping and see someone stocking shelves, I still wonder, do they know? Are they watching me? And is there a line between helping corporations enforce meaningless standards and destroying someone's last thread of hope? Because I crossed that line, and someone nearly died because of it. I never thought I'd take work from Craigslist. It wasn't that I felt above it, I'd just heard too many horror stories. Sketchy meetups, no-shows, scams, or worse. But sometimes life squeezes you until all the safe options vanish. It started 3 weeks after losing my full-time position at a dental clinic's front desk. They downsized. I'd been living alone in a studio in West Haven, barely getting by with savings and random gigs. Rent was coming due soon. When I got desperate enough, I reached out to my friend Mackenzie, who always juggled multiple side hustles. She mentioned babysitting through Craigslist before. Just vet them thoroughly, she warned. Don't go in blind. Ask questions. Trust your gut. I'd babysat plenty in high school and college, and I was good with kids. Figured it couldn't be much different now, just keeping children safe and entertained for a few hours. The first few listings I found seemed either too vague or obviously sketchy, but then I spotted one that looked normal. Almost too normal. Childcare needed, Saturday evening. Hi, looking for a sitter for our 2 boys this Saturday, ages 6 and 9, from about 5:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. Pretty laid-back household, just need someone responsible while we go out for an anniversary dinner. Pay is $120 for the evening. Message for address details. Thanks, Natalie P. Something about this post felt safe and straightforward. The tone seemed casual. The rate was generous but not suspiciously high. I replied. Natalie messaged back an hour later with the address and a quick note. Thanks so much for replying. My husband and I are heading out right after 5:30, Natalie wrote. The boys are Isaac and Dylan. They're super easy kids. Dinner's already taken care of. Just TV, maybe some games, perhaps reading before bedtime. Should be a peaceful evening. We exchanged several more messages after that. She came across completely normal, even warm. She ended with a friendly smiley face. I almost felt foolish for being so cautious. Still, I did my homework. I looked up the address, 1585 Riverside Lane. Located in a cul-de-sac just outside town, near some older residential areas, but not remotely far enough to trigger any warning bells. I forwarded all the details to Mackenzie, just as a precaution. Text me when you arrive, she insisted. And if anything seems off, just get out of there. The afternoon was bone dry when I pulled into the cracked driveway at 5:18. The house looked modest, single level with peeling blue paint and untrimmed bushes. A wind chime tinkled softly beneath the porch overhang. The porch light glowed despite daylight still lingering. Something about the place gave me an odd tightness in my chest, not exactly fear, just a strange discomfort. I knocked once. No response. I tried again, this time hearing movement behind the door. When it finally swung open, I found myself facing a man. Late 50s, maybe early 60s. Tall, gaunt, with thinning gray hair and a scraggly, patchy beard. He wore a faded t-shirt and paint-stained jeans. He squinted at me like his vision wasn't great. You the babysitter? He asked gruffly. Yeah. Natalie messaged me to be here at 5:30. Right. He mumbled, scratching his head. She just ran out with the boys for some snacks. You can come inside though. She'll be back in 5 minutes. The way his eyes lingered made my spine stiffen, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions based on appearances. I stepped inside. The house reeked of dust and old cooking grease. The front room was jam-packed with cardboard boxes, stacks of newspapers, and a solitary recliner. The air felt heavy and stale. Sorry about the mess, he said, shutting the door behind me. I heard the lock click. We're, doing some reorganizing. No problem, I lied. He pointed down a narrow hallway. Living room's back there. Has the TV and couch. You can wait there. As I walked through, I carefully scanned everything. No toys anywhere. No children's drawings, no backpacks, no family photos, just plain beige walls, generic framed artwork, and layers of dust. I lowered myself onto a worn brown sofa. My phone vibrated. Mackenzie checking in? I typed quickly. Weird atmosphere, but managing so far. Natalie isn't here yet. Just her husband. He passed by the hallway again, muttering under his breath. He kept pacing. Occasionally he'd peek into the living room with comments like, "She should have returned by now," or, "Sorry about this, just bad timing." The whole situation increasingly felt like some rehearsed act. By 5:45, I stood up. "I think I might just leave," I announced, trying to sound casual. He looked suddenly alarmed. "Wait, no, she's probably downstairs. I didn't hear the front door earlier, so maybe she came in through the side entrance." He gestured toward a door I hadn't noticed before, partially hidden behind a kitchen curtain. "She goes down there sometimes with the boys. Craft stuff, art projects. She's probably waiting for you." The house had grown eerily silent. I approached the door and pulled it open. The basement below was completely dark. A cold, earthy smell hit me, mold, dust, and something metallic, like rust. I froze in place. "Go ahead," he urged, his voice unnaturally cheerful. "They're probably just setting things up." I remained motionless. My stomach churned violently. "Actually, I just got a message. My ride's here early. I need to go. I'm really sorry. Maybe we can reschedule." I turned and bolted toward the front entrance. Locked. He stood behind me. "Hold on a second," he said, his voice turning harsh. "You haven't even met the kids yet." I desperately fumbled with the deadbolt, heart racing. Click, it opened. I didn't look back, just flew down the porch steps across the yard to my car. My hands trembled as I unlocked the door. Behind me, I heard him shouting something, a name or phrase, I didn't care what. I slammed my door shut and sped away. In my rearview mirror, I saw him standing in the front yard, hands clenched into fists. I drove until reaching a grocery store parking lot 10 minutes away. I parked, broke down crying, then called Mackenzie. She answered immediately. "What happened?" she demanded. I related everything. "Call the police," she urged. "Right now." The dispatcher maintained a calm tone as I described the house, the man, the fake babysitting setup. She requested the address and thanked me for reporting it. An officer phoned me 2 hours later for additional details. I repeated everything. He said they'd investigate. That was supposedly the end of it, at least officially. 2 weeks passed. I tried forgetting about it. Got temporary work at a pet supply store, immersed myself in normal daily routines. Then one evening my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hi there. We saw your babysitting profile online. We have 2 boys, ages 6 and 9, and need a sitter this Saturday evening. $120 for the night. Let us know if you're interested. Natalie P." Same exact wording, same pay, different phone number. No way to trace the profile. I never even created a public babysitting profile. I blocked the number immediately. 2 days later, another message arrived from yet another number. "Hey, found your ad. Looking for a sitter near Riverside area. 2 boys. Easy night. Let us know if you're free. Ben and Natalie." The very next day I changed my phone number completely. 3 months later, I relocated to a different city, accepting Mackenzie's offer to crash at her place in Pinecrest until I could get back on my feet financially. I never received another message from Natalie, but I've kept screenshots of every text exchange just in case something ever comes of it. Sometimes when I'm browsing job listings online, I still notice similar postings, same casual tone, identical pay rate, different names, various zip codes, and I can't help wondering how many people ignored their instincts, how many actually descended those basement steps, and how many never emerged again. It all began with a pretty standard online listing. I'd finally decided to sell my 2006 Honda CR-V. Nothing fancy about it, just a reliable vehicle with a clean title, no major mechanical issues, and decent life expectancy despite rolling over 200,000 miles. The paint had faded somewhat on the hood, and the air conditioning occasionally made this strange rattling sound when it powered up, but nothing serious. I'd maintained it meticulously over the years, regular oil changes, tire rotations, brake replacements, always right on schedule. I'd upgraded to a newer model a few weeks earlier and didn't want my old car just sitting around collecting dust, so I figured I'd post it on Craigslist. That's where I'd purchased it years before, and most of my experiences using the site had been positive. People always warn you about sketchy transactions, but I believed if you exercised basic caution, everything would be fine. Or at least that's what I thought at the time. I captured about 10 detailed photos, interior, exterior, odometer reading, even under the hood. Then I wrote up a straightforward but honest description. I priced it reasonably at $2,800. Nothing suspicious, not suspiciously cheap, just fair market value. The listing went live Thursday afternoon with 0 responses that day. But Friday morning around 10:30, I received a text from an unknown number. "Hey, saw your ad for the CR-V. My name's Eric. I've been looking for one of these. Still available?" I responded promptly. "Yep, still have it. Want to come take a look?" His reply came almost immediately. "Yes, I can come by tomorrow night after work around 8:30 or 9. That okay?" I hesitated briefly. While it wasn't unusual for people to view cars in the evening, especially with work schedules, something about meeting a stranger that late made me slightly uneasy. Still, I lived in a decent-sized apartment complex on the outskirts of East Meadow, a quiet suburban area. My car was already parked in the open lot, so he wouldn't even need to approach my apartment door. "That's fine," I texted back. "Just meet me in the parking lot. I'll be standing by the car." "Cool. See you then," he replied. Nothing about this exchange raised any red flags at the time. The following day, I thoroughly cleaned the car, vacuumed the interior, wiped down all surfaces, emptied my personal belongings from the glove compartment and center console. Around 8:15, I threw on a hoodie and headed downstairs to wait beside my vehicle. It was dark outside but not late enough to feel particularly unsettling. People were still walking their dogs or arriving home from work. I stood near my CR-V, casually scrolling through my phone while watching each car that entered the lot. At exactly 8:58, a black Dodge Charger with heavily tinted windows pulled in slowly, cruising past me before stopping in a visitor spot 3 spaces away. The driver's door swung open and a tall man stepped out. He appeared to be mid-30s, possibly older. Completely bald, muscular build, numerous tattoos covering both forearms. He wore a black Carhartt jacket with dark jeans. There was this intense energy about him, like he was perpetually ready for confrontation, even when silent. But he smiled as he approached. "You selling the CR-V?" he asked, his voice deeper than I'd expected. "Yeah," I answered, forcing a polite smile. "You must be Eric." "Yep." He circled the vehicle, examining the body. "Looks clean. Been driving it pretty consistently. Mostly just commuting to and from work. It's been completely reliable for years. No fluid leaks, no overheating issues. Had the timing belt replaced at 180,000. Got all the maintenance paperwork if you're interested." He nodded, pulling out a small flashlight to inspect the tires. "Mind if I check under the hood?" "Sure," I said, releasing the latch. We went through the typical motions. He asked several normal questions. He didn't seem particularly knowledgeable about cars, but knew enough to appear genuinely interested. "Mind if I take it for a quick test drive?" he asked. "I'll need to come along," I replied automatically. "Just company policy." I attempted a laugh, but he didn't reciprocate. Eric grinned, though there was no warmth behind it. "No problem." We got in. I directed him around the block, then on to the main road where he tested the acceleration. The drive wasn't long, maybe 10 minutes total, but the silence made it feel endless. He barely spoke, just stared straight ahead with his jaw visibly clenched. "I like it," he finally remarked. "Feels solid." When we returned, he pulled into the same parking spot as before. I stepped out, feeling hopeful. "So, what do you think?" I asked. He studied me for a moment. "Yeah, I'll think about it," he responded flatly. I blinked in surprise. "Oh, okay, sure." Then casually he added, "Hey, mind if I use your bathroom real quick before I go?" That moment seemed frozen in time, like a dramatic needle drop in a movie scene. Every instinct in my body immediately tensed. Yeah, I'd rather not," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "Nothing personal, I just don't let strangers into my apartment." Eric didn't respond immediately. He just stared at me intently. His smile vanished completely. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. Then he gave this slow nod. "All right, no worries." I offered a quick wave and turned to leave. Instead of heading to the nearest side entrance like I normally would, I deliberately circled around to the main doors, just playing it safe. When I reached the front entrance, I glanced back. No one was following me. Feeling relieved, I stepped inside. The lobby stood quiet and empty. I walked to the elevator, jabbed the button, and waited. When the doors slid open, I stepped in, pressed 3, and leaned against the wall, exhaling slowly. The ride up took barely 30 seconds. As I stepped out and turned left toward my apartment, I froze mid-step. At the far end of the hallway, the stairwell door swung open. Eric emerged through it. For a split second, I desperately hoped it was just someone who resembled him. But deep down, I knew better. Same jacket, same purposeful stride, same emotionless stare. My blood turned to ice. I didn't say a word. I just pivoted and walked rapidly in the opposite direction. I tried maintaining a normal pace. Then I heard it, footsteps behind me. Heavy ones, accelerating. That's when I broke into a full sprint toward the other end of the corridor. Pure instinct took over. I shoved through the stairwell door and thundered down the steps, my heart pounding against my ribs. I could hear him behind me, closer than I'd hoped. Down 2 flights into the underground parking garage. Our footsteps echoed off the concrete walls. My lungs burned with each breath. I avoided heading toward my car, no time to fumble with keys. Instead, I raced to the opposite stairwell, slammed the door shut behind me, and bounded up to the ground level. When I burst through the exit door on the building's side, the cold night air hit my face like a slap. I sprinted across the parking lot to my CRV, hand trembling as I unlocked it, jumped inside, locked the doors, and twisted the key. The engine roared to life. I peeled out of there while dialing 911. The dispatcher kept me on the line as I circled nearby streets. I explained everything, described Eric, his car, the entire situation. 5 minutes later, I spotted flashing lights back at my complex. I cautiously returned, parking along the street. Eric's Charger remained in the lot. Officers found him attempting to force open a ground-floor apartment's patio door. He carried no tools, no identification, no cash, clearly had zero actual interest in purchasing a vehicle. That night, I realized how narrowly I'd escaped something truly horrific. He never planned to buy anything. The car listing was merely bait. All he wanted was an address, a face, and a window of opportunity. I deleted my Craigslist that same night, never used the platform again, and now whenever I sell anything online, I meet potential buyers exclusively in police station parking lots. No exceptions whatsoever. I used to work night shifts at this small roadside hotel just off the highway. Nothing fancy, just stale coffee, flickering lobby lights, and occasional drunk guests arguing about checkout fees. But it covered my rent and let me save a little cash. The best part about that schedule was the peace and quiet. After midnight, except for random check-ins, I mostly sat alone behind the front desk. During those slow hours, I'd browse Craigslist, mainly for entertainment, checking the free section or electronics listings. People discarded the strangest items: broken exercise equipment, entire dining sets, baby clothes, even functioning televisions from folks rushing through cross-country moves. At that time, my TV had recently died, a hand-me-down Toshiba that finally surrendered after years of service. Watching Netflix on my laptop screen was getting tiresome. I wasn't seeking anything elaborate, just something functional. One night around 2 a.m., halfway through a gas station sandwich and lukewarm coffee, I spotted a listing. 50-inch LG flat screen, $120 lightly used. The photos weren't generic stock images. This wasn't some shady reseller. The television sat on a cheap stand in a dimly lit, cluttered living room. Several moving boxes were stacked nearby. The whole thing looked legitimate, like someone genuinely clearing out belongings. The price wasn't suspiciously low, just reasonable enough for someone wanting a quick sale. The ad had only been posted 28 minutes earlier. I sent a brief message. "Hi, I'm interested in the TV. Still available?" Then I returned to monitoring the hotel's security cameras and checking in a truck driver who smelled like diesel fuel and disappointment. An hour later, I received a reply. "Hey, this is Jenny from Craigslist. Yes, still available. You can come by tomorrow after 6 if that works." Her name wasn't mentioned in the original listing, but that wasn't unusual. I texted back. 7 works for me. What's the address? She sent over an address on Cedar Heights Drive, a quiet neighborhood about 10 minutes from my apartment. One of those older areas with spacious lawns and aging single-story homes. I checked it on maps. Seemed safe enough. "Cool. See you then," I replied. The next day after my shift, I stopped at an ATM and withdrew $140, just to handle any awkward change situations. Daylight still lingered when I pulled into the neighborhood. Birds chirped overhead. Kids rode bikes down the street. A guy across the way mowed his lawn. The address Jenny provided was a beige house with a sagging porch and slightly overgrown yard. Not sketchy, just neglected. The kind of place someone's elderly relative might have owned for decades. I parked at the curb, tucked the cash into my jacket pocket, and approached the front door. Before I could even knock, it swung open. A woman stood there, average height with dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing a faded college sweatshirt and leggings. Early 30s, maybe? "Hey, you must be Devin?" she greeted me. "That's me." I nodded. "Hear about the TV. I'm Jenny. Come on in. Sorry about the mess. We're kind of between situations right now." The interior matched what I'd seen outside. Sparsely furnished, dimly lit, with a few cardboard boxes stacked against the wall and furniture partially packed or rearranged. The only illumination came from a small lamp tucked in the corner. "No problem," I said casually. "Looks exactly how my place did right before I moved in." She laughed slightly. It sounded forced, like she didn't genuinely find it amusing. "It's back in the bedroom," she explained, motioning down a hallway. "Right this way." Something felt off. Maybe it was the unnatural silence. No background noise whatsoever, no television, no fan running, not even the subtle hum of a refrigerator. But I followed her anyway. The hallway stretched narrow before us, with faint footprints visible in the carpet fibers. She halted at the final door on the right. "Right in here," she announced, pushing it open. I stepped inside and froze instantly. There wasn't any TV. The room stood completely empty. No bed, no boxes, no furniture at all, just a vacant space with dusty blinds drawn shut. Then, slam, the door crashed shut behind me. Locked. I spun around immediately and twisted the knob. It rattled uselessly. "Jenny?" I called out. No response. "What the hell is happening? Open this door!" I pounded my fist against it. Nothing but silence. I checked my phone. No signal, not even a single bar. I drew in a shaky breath, the kind your body takes when your brain suddenly comprehends genuine danger. Pressing my ear against the door, I listened carefully. Muffled voices, two distinct ones. Jenny and a man. I hadn't heard him at all until now. "Let me out!" I shouted. "I'm calling the police!" No answer. I rushed to the window and tried the latch. It felt brittle, securely locked, barely budging. Panic started bubbling up inside me. I paced frantically, scanning for anything useful. But the room remained completely bare. I returned to the door, pounding harder, yelling louder. Still nothing. Then inspiration struck. I opened my phone, located the alarm app, maximized the volume, and activated the loudest siren available. I tossed the device into the far corner and pressed my back firmly against the wall beside the doorframe. Waited. Footsteps approached. Heavy ones? Rushing. The door creaked open. A man entered, tall, stocky, dressed in a black hoodie and worn jeans. His eyes darted straight to the blaring phone, clearly intending to silence it. That created my window of opportunity. I lunged forward, slamming into him with every ounce of strength I possessed. His shoulder clipped mine painfully, but I broke through before he could grab me. The hallway blurred past. Jenny emerged from the living room, eyes widening. She reached for me. I ducked low, nearly tripping over a box. I didn't hesitate. Out the front door, across the porch, car keys already clutched in my hand. I hit the unlock button while running, yanked the door open, threw myself inside, slammed it shut, locked it, and fired up the engine. They had reached the porch by then. I didn't look back. I sped away, tires screeching against pavement. Didn't stop until reaching a gas station 3 blocks down. I burst inside and approached the cashier. "Please call the police. Someone just tried to trap me." The officers took my statement afterward. I provided Jenny's number, the address, all the ad information. When they drove me back to the house, empty, completely dark, curtains drawn, no sign of occupants. A neighbor popped out and informed the police that the house was supposed to be vacant. "Owner's been away on business all week," they explained. "Nobody should be in there." The Craigslist ad? Deleted. Jenny's phone number? Disconnected. My phone, abandoned somewhere in that house, had vanished too. The officer mentioned this wasn't the first scheme like this they'd encountered. People lure you in with an enticing sale. Sometimes it's just robbery, sometimes something far worse. They never caught Jenny or her accomplice. I purchased a used television from a local pawn shop the following week and permanently swore off Craigslist. I wasn't actually searching for a car initially. My son Cooper had been constantly badgering me about getting his driver's license, and wanted something dependable for commuting to his classes and part-time job. At first I dismissed it, but after weeks of him showing me various listings, his test scores, and virtually begging me to visit the DMV, I finally relented. He was turning 18 soon, and I figured it would make the perfect surprise gift. He had absolutely no clue I was planning anything. My budget wasn't especially generous, though. After extensive searching across all the typical websites, AutoTrader, Facebook Marketplace, Cars.com, I grew increasingly frustrated. Every decent vehicle was either prohibitively expensive or sold within hours of listing. The only platform I hadn't explored was Craigslist, which I'd mostly avoided because of all those cautionary tales. But out of sheer desperation, I decided to give it a chance. To my surprise, I discovered a listing that seemed almost too perfect. A 2004 Honda Accord, silver exterior, clean interior, only 68,000 miles, no accident history, priced at just $3,500. The photographs appeared authentic. The car lacked that overly polished, dealer-enhanced appearance. It sat in an unpaved driveway surrounded by trees with a slightly dusty finish. It looked genuinely real, exactly like something an ordinary person would be selling. The seller introduced himself as Scott from a tiny town called Green Valley, about 20 minutes from where I lived. I phoned him that evening. His voice sounded older, probably late 50s, with this relaxed, courteous manner. He explained he was selling because his daughter had relocated to another state and left the vehicle behind. Runs absolutely perfect, he assured me. Just replace the brakes and battery, no unexpected issues. We scheduled a meeting for the following afternoon. I told Cooper I needed to run some errands and headed out with the cash securely tucked inside my jacket. It was an overcast Thursday, with dark clouds threatening rainfall. I remember how eerily quiet the drive became once I exited the highway onto a series of winding, tree-bordered country roads. Green Valley barely registered as a speck on most maps. His address led me up this long, gravelly driveway that curved uphill through dense underbrush and ancient oak trees. At the summit stood a modest single-story house with peeling paint and a drooping front porch. The Honda was nowhere in sight, just a rusted green pickup with mismatched tires parked beneath a weathered carport. But the house number matched what was listed. I parked along the shoulder and approached on foot. The driveway crunched beneath my boots, and I noticed the overwhelming silence surrounding me. No birdsong, no breeze rustling the leaves, just the faint tick of my cooling engine behind me. The front entrance featured an ornate knocker shaped like a lion's head but lacked a doorbell. I rapped once, then twice. No response. I waited patiently. 5 minutes crawled by before I knocked again, harder this time. Still nothing. When I tried calling Scott's number, I heard the ringtone, faint and tinny, coming from inside the house. That's when uneasiness began creeping up my spine. I moved toward the window beside the porch, cupping my hands against the glass to block the glare. The interior was dimly lit. Curtains were partially drawn, but I could make out portions of the living room. Stacks of newspapers, furniture draped with sheets, and what initially appeared to be some taxidermied animal propped in an armchair. Except it wasn't an animal. At first glance, I thought it might be a mannequin. It wore a hoodie, slumped forward in the chair, with unnaturally pale skin and glassy eyes that didn't look like plastic. I recoiled instinctively, my heartbeat accelerating. I tried convincing myself I was being paranoid. Maybe it was just some bizarre sculpture or lifelike doll, but something primal warned me against getting any closer. I circled around to the side where a garage door stood partially raised. Inside were meticulously organized rows of automotive components, doors, bumpers, seats, all carefully arranged and labeled. Too systematic for a junkyard, too pristine. The Accord was nowhere to be found. Just as I turned to leave, I glimpsed another figure through the house's rear window. This one stood motionless, back turned, facing the backyard, positioned like a display item. I tapped lightly on the glass, a sickening dread washing over me. No reaction whatsoever. The back door creaked slightly ajar from a gentle breeze, revealing a darkened hallway beyond. That same ringtone echoed faintly from deeper within the structure, then abruptly stopped. I retreated one step. The window blinds I just peered through snapped shut violently. Someone had been standing there, watching my every move. That's when I bolted. I no longer cared about the money. I sprinted back to my vehicle, jumped inside, locked the doors, and floored the accelerator. Gravel sprayed behind me as I fishtailed down the driveway, not slowing until I reached the main road. That evening, I checked Craigslist again. The listing had vanished completely. Scott's number? Disconnected. I reported everything to local authorities, but without a license plate or legitimate name, their options were limited. They informed me the property had been abandoned for years. Whoever I'd spoken with had been using a disposable phone. Cooper never discovered what happened. I eventually purchased a certified pre-owned Civic from a reputable dealership instead. He was ecstatic. But occasionally, driving alone after dark, my thoughts drift back to that pale figure in the chair, its unnatural stillness, those immaculately organized parts in the garage, the phone ringing inside an allegedly empty house. And I can't help wondering how many others answered Scott's advertisement before me. To my amazement, the officer taking my statement didn't give me that. "You're nuts. Look. The listing vanished completely?" he asked, fingers moving slowly across his keyboard. "Yeah, it disappeared right after I left that place," I confirmed. He paused briefly. "You'd be shocked how many reports we get about situations exactly like this. Craigslist traps, fake listings, Sometimes even darker scenarios. Darker? I prompted. He just continued typing without elaboration. About a week later, a detective left me a voicemail. They'd thoroughly searched the property. The house had been completely vacant. Nobody had officially resided there for at least 12 months. Neighbors had never heard of anyone named Scott, and no vehicles were officially registered to that address. The pickup truck was long gone before authorities arrived, but they uncovered something truly disturbing. Hidden in the basement behind a concealed wall panel, they discovered photographs, dozens of them, developed from an old-style camera. People caught mid-conversation, sitting in their cars, smiling hopefully at the entrance. Several appeared visibly frightened. One showed someone inspecting the rear of the house, precisely as I had done. They confirmed one photo featured me. They never caught whoever had been occupying the place. Their theory suggested this person temporarily inhabited foreclosed homes, using disposable phones and temporary listings as bait. Perhaps not necessarily to kill victims, but to frighten, manipulate, or something even worse. Nobody knows what happened to the other individuals in those photographs. I deleted my Craigslist account that very night, and haven't attempted buying another used vehicle since. Sometimes I wonder what might have happened if I'd knocked just once more, ventured deeper into that yard, or stayed just a few minutes longer. But I didn't. And perhaps that single decision is the only reason I'm still here to tell this story. I never imagined a second-hand hockey goal could endanger my child's life. But it did. Even 20 years later, certain nights I still bolt awake dreaming about that rest stop, those harsh lights, and the sound of his terrified scream. Let me start from the beginning. It was 2002. We lived in this peaceful suburb called Oakfield, Illinois, the kind of neighborhood where people rarely locked doors and neighbors actually brought over homemade dishes. My wife Rachel worked night shifts at the local hospital as an RN, while I ran my small car-flipping business from our garage. Nothing glamorous, but it kept food on our table. Our son Tyler was 11 then, completely obsessed with hockey like most kids in our region. He practically worshipped Jeremy Roenick and had developed this powerful shot that nearly destroyed our fence. We couldn't afford those expensive travel leagues, but we tried everything possible to support his passion. He'd constantly improvise makeshift goals using trash cans or branches, though it wasn't really adequate. That winter, he constantly begged for a proper net, not those flimsy toy versions. He wanted a full-sized regulation goal. We checked every sporting goods store around, but everything was priced way beyond our budget, even second-hand equipment. That's when Craigslist entered the picture. For those unfamiliar with the early 2000s version, Craigslist was nothing like today's platform. Just a basic digital yard sale without fancy graphics or ads. Just this plain, ugly website full of random listings. But occasionally you'd find amazing deals if you moved quickly. I once scored a perfectly good snowblower completely free. One evening, I spotted this listing. Regulation hockey goal, slightly used, $50. Comes with puck and 2 sticks. Must pick up, call for details. No images, just that brief description and a contact number. I stared at it for several minutes. Some instinct warned me something felt off. But when your kid's eyes light up over something he's dreamed about for months, you tend to ignore those warning signals. I called the number. A man answered after 3 rings. Yeah? Hi, I'm calling about the hockey goal from your listing. He paused before responding. Oh yeah, still have it. You interested? His voice had this unnervingly flat quality, not exactly creepy, just completely detached, like he couldn't care either way. I am. My son's been wanting one for ages. Another pause. I'm up in Fairview, but could meet halfway. Has to be after work though. Around 9. Fairview was roughly 2 hours north. Meeting midway would place us somewhere off the interstate, probably a rest area or gas station. I can do that, I agreed. You'll bring the goal? Yeah, gotta pick up. My buddy's bringing the sticks and puck. He'll follow behind me. Something about his phrasing sent a chill through me, like rehearsed lines from a script. But again I dismissed it. We agreed to meet at a rest stop off I-75 near Clearwater. I told my wife I'd return within 2 hours. Tyler begged to come along. I refused initially, then relented. He promised to stay inside our van the entire time. That decision haunts me still. The drive passed uneventfully. Tyler talked excitedly about hockey the whole way, how he'd finally practiced properly. I felt like a good dad, doing something that mattered. We pulled into the designated rest area around 8:50. The place was nearly empty, just a vending area and parking spaces under harsh yellow-orange lights that made everything look eerie. I parked directly under the brightest light and reminded Tyler firmly to stay inside. "If anything seems weird, lock the doors immediately, okay?" He nodded confidently, flashing me a thumbs up. At precisely 9:06, a black pickup truck rolled into the lot, stopping several feet ahead of us. It looked older but well-maintained. Dark-tinted windows obscured the driver, and I noticed it had no front license plate. I stepped out of my van, approaching cautiously. The driver's window rolled down smoothly. Inside sat a guy, bald, middle-aged, probably early 40s. Square jawline, wearing mirrored sunglasses despite the darkness. "You Steve?" he asked flatly. "Yeah," I nodded. "My buddy's got the equipment. Should be pulling in right behind me." I glanced at his truck bed, completely empty, no hockey goal in sight. My gut tightened instantly. "Why didn't you just bring everything in one vehicle?" I questioned. He shrugged dismissively. "Couldn't fit it all." At that exact moment, 2 more pickup trucks rolled into the rest area. One backed in directly behind my minivan. The other parked to our right. All 3 looked similar, older models, dark-tinted windows, and none contained any visible sports equipment. Something triggered in my brain, not panic exactly, but pure survival instinct. I spun around and shouted, "Tyler, lock the doors now!" He reacted immediately, hitting the locks. Then these men started climbing out of their trucks. 6 of them total. Big dudes. Some resembled construction workers, others looked like hardcore gym rats. They remained eerily silent, just staring us down. The bald guy stepped out, adjusting his jacket casually. He nodded toward the man from the truck behind mine, who began moving toward our van. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Wait," I stammered. "Here, take the money. It's all I've got." I yanked out my wallet and thrust $80 toward him. He thumbed through the bills with a scowl. "Where's the rest?" "That's everything I brought," I replied, barely keeping my voice steady. "Please, just take it and go." He nodded again. 2 men suddenly rushed toward our minivan. I sprinted after them, screaming for them to stay away from my son. One of them smashed the rear window with a tire iron. The sound of shattering glass mixed with Tyler's terrified scream nearly broke something inside me. Then, red and blue lights. A siren wailed closer. A highway patrol cruiser whipped into the parking area, tires squealing against pavement. The trooper inside immediately assessed the situation, flipped on the spotlight, and aimed it directly at the group. Within seconds, the men scattered. 2 trucks peeled away instantly. The third got trapped between my van and the police vehicle. The officer jumped out, weapon drawn, shouting commands. Backup arrived within 5 minutes. Tyler was safe, trembling and sobbing, but unharmed. Law enforcement questioned us for nearly an hour. I provided every detail I could remember. Turned out the guys in the trapped truck cooperated immediately. They revealed names, addresses, and even admitted this wasn't their first time using fake Craigslist ads as bait. They specifically targeted fathers, men who'd do anything for their children. Police escorted us home that night. I drove with shaking hands the entire journey. Tyler fell asleep clutching my arm tightly. I only told Rachel enough to explain the shattered window and why our son couldn't stop crying. Several weeks later, detectives informed me they'd arrested 5 of the 6 perpetrators. The only one who escaped was the bald guy, the one who'd made the initial call, who orchestrated everything. I never saw his face again. I still used Craigslist afterward, but with strict new rules: never alone, Never after dark, never with my child present. We eventually got a hockey net from a neighbor whose son had left for college, completely free. But even now, whenever I spot a black pickup truck, I instinctively check the back for a hockey goal. I didn't even research the neighborhood beforehand. That probably sounds incredibly careless, but when you're sleeping in your car and stretching a single can of soup across 2 days, details like that become secondary. I just desperately needed shelter. A bed, a roof overhead, maybe a functioning lock. That Craigslist listing appeared like a lifeline thrown to someone drowning. Live-in cook needed for private estate, meals included, private quarters. It sounded almost too perfect. My name's Parker Wilson. I used to work as a sous chef at this upscale restaurant in Detroit before everything collapsed. The pandemic hit, layoffs followed, and the owner quietly closed down completely. My boyfriend Leo tried holding things together for both of us, but he died suddenly from a brain aneurysm just months later. No warning signs, just collapsed in the shower one morning. After that, my life disintegrated rapidly. Lost our apartment, drained all savings, found myself driving between shelters desperately seeking employment. So when I spotted that listing, I didn't hesitate at all. The estate was located outside a tiny Minnesota town, far from main highways. Just reaching it required navigating a winding gravel road through dense pine forest. My battered Honda struggled up the lengthy driveway, where an enormous iron gate slowly swung open, as if it had been anticipating my arrival. Beyond the entrance, the house came into view, an imposing colonial-style mansion with towering columns, large shuttered windows, and an unsettling stillness. Waiting for me on the front steps stood a man in a dark gray suit, tall, composed, perhaps mid-40s. He introduced himself as Mr. Lancaster, the caretaker. "You're Parker Wilson?" he inquired, extending his hand. "That's me," I replied, attempting to smile like I hadn't been living out of my trunk for 3 weeks. "Count Sebastian isn't here today," he explained while leading me inside. "But he left instructions to get you settled. You'll meet him later." I wasn't sure how to respond. Count? As in royalty? He must have interpreted my confusion. His family has maintained that title for generations. European heritage, nothing official anymore. Just tradition. I nodded politely, though I wasn't entirely convinced. We walked through this spotless hallway decorated with portraits. All appeared to be paintings from the 1800s, men wearing military uniforms, women in elaborate gowns. At the corridor's end, Lancaster opened a side door and guided me along a garden path to a smaller brick structure, hidden behind a row of trees. Not exactly primitive, but definitely separate from the main residence. Private, certainly. Isolated, without question. "These are your quarters," Lancaster announced, unlocking the entrance. The interior was modest, hardwood floors, a narrow bed with metal frame, basic bathroom, small kitchenette, and an old-fashioned landline phone bolted firmly to the wall. "Cell reception doesn't reach this far," he added, seemingly reading my thoughts. "If you need anything from the Count, you'll use this phone." I nodded. "Got it." He lingered, hands still gripping the doorknob. "One thing, don't be alarmed by noises during the night. This area tends to echo." I found his comment strange but simply smiled and thanked him. After his departure, I dropped my duffel onto the floor and sank onto the mattress, exhaling deeply for what felt like the first time in weeks. I was alone, but had shelter, security, and a real bed. I could breathe again. Or so I believed. That first night proved difficult, not because of the accommodations or quietness, but because I couldn't shake the sensation that something lurked just beyond my window. Soft tapping sounds began around 2 a.m. I yanked the curtain back quickly, hoping to catch some animal. Nothing there, just trees swaying gently in the breeze. At 3:11 a.m., I heard what I can only describe as whimpering, not animal-like, but distinctly human, muffled, almost sorrowful. Sleep barely came. When I arrived at the main kitchen at 7 a.m., I must have looked rough. "Everything all right?" asked an older woman who introduced herself as Eleanor, the Count's mother. "Didn't sleep well," I admitted. Probably just nerves. New surroundings. She smiled kindly. That cottage hasn't been occupied for quite some time. It can feel unsettling initially, but improves with time. I prepared breakfast, eggs, toast, hand-cut potatoes. The Count never appeared. I was informed he typically kept irregular hours. By afternoon, I felt more stable. Daylight helped, and I convinced myself last night was simply my exhausted mind playing tricks. After serving dinner, I returned to my quarters. I washed up, climbed into bed, and that's when everything started again. Tapping sounds, more insistent this time. Then the whimpering, low, like someone in pain. I sat upright, heart racing. This wasn't merely an echo. I got up, switched on lights, and searched every corner. Nothing. But when I pressed my ear against the floorboards, I heard it clearly. The sounds originated from beneath the floor. The following morning, I cornered Lancaster. May I ask what happened to the previous cook? He appeared startled. Why do you ask? Just curious, I lied. He hesitated noticeably. Her name was Renee. Arrived 6 months ago, stayed in that same cottage, claimed to appreciate the solitude. But after 3 weeks, she vanished. Vanished? No signs of struggle. Her belongings remained untouched. We assumed she left overnight. Her husband came searching for her, but she was gone. Authorities investigated but found nothing conclusive. My stomach churned. You just left it at that? He nodded grimly. We conducted searches, I assure you, but discovered nothing. It was as if she simply disappeared. That night the sounds became unbearable. Taps transformed into bangs, whimpering into pleading. I snapped completely. I tore away the rug, searching for loose floorboards. I found 3 slightly uneven ones near the bed. My hands trembled violently as I pried one up. Beneath lay cloth, white, heavily stained. I pulled it back and the smell hit me first. Then her face, mummified, twisted in terror. I screamed until my voice gave out. Police arrived after Lancaster called them. The body was exhumed. It was Renee. Autopsy revealed strangulation. Her husband, who claimed to be searching for her, had stayed just long enough to murder her and bury her beneath the floorboards. He used a mannequin dressed in her clothing to deceive security cameras, then walked away like nothing had happened. They arrested him in Milwaukee. He confessed, claimed she planned to leave him. I resigned that same day. Drove back to Detroit, parked outside my former restaurant, and sobbed uncontrollably for an hour. My previous life, painful as it had become, suddenly felt infinitely safer than any fresh start. Some doors, especially those standing wide open when you're desperate, should never be walked through. Since I hadn't answered my phone all day, they'd already cut the water to my unit hours earlier. No water meant no coffee, no shower, and definitely no flushing the toilet. I asked if they were sending someone to fix it, and my landlord just said, "It's your apartment, your responsibility. Just send me the invoice and I'll reimburse you." Great. I hung up, groggy and irritated, and started calling around everywhere. Plumbers I found online, people recommended in local Facebook groups, emergency services. Everyone was either fully booked, not picking up, or charging ridiculous emergency call-out rates. I was about ready to give up when I messaged my friend Bailey. She offered to let me crash at her place if things didn't get sorted, then suggested, "Why don't you try Craigslist? Sometimes you'll find guys there who take quick jobs." I hesitated. Craigslist always seemed sketchy to me, like some digital Wild West where anything goes. But desperation has a way of changing your standards. After scrolling through the household services section, I spotted it. 38-year-old handyman. Skilled, affordable, fast response. Can do plumbing, electrical, light repairs. Text or call. The listing was straightforward and to the point. No business name, just a mobile number. I paused briefly, then sent a text. He called back within 5 minutes, introducing himself as Victor. I explained my situation, and surprisingly he responded, "Yeah, no problem. I can be there in about an hour." Shouldn't take long. He sounded friendly enough, almost cheerful, saying it seemed like a simple job, probably just a loose seal or cracked pipe under the floor. I didn't know any better, so I took his word for it. True to his promise, about an hour later he texted, "Outside." I realized I hadn't specified which apartment was mine, so I buzzed him in and waited by the door. When I opened it, he looked completely ordinary: jeans, navy hoodie, tool bag in hand. Short buzzed hair, slight stubble. Didn't smile much, but didn't appear suspicious either. "Bathroom's down the hall," I told him, and he nodded, walking in without hesitation. As he headed that direction, I returned to the kitchen. I was too exhausted to play host. I poured myself some orange juice, hoping the sugar might wake me up a bit. Then he called out, "Hey, can you come look at this? Something seems weird." I shuffled over and leaned into the doorway. That's the last thing I remember clearly. The next moment was all bright lights and muffled voices. Someone repeatedly saying my name, a woman's voice. "Stay with us, Ben. You're okay. Don't move." I opened my eyes and blinked against the harsh glare. A paramedic was shining a flashlight into my pupils. My head throbbed fiercely. My mouth felt like sandpaper. I tried sitting up, but gentle hands restrained me. "You've suffered a head injury. Try not to move. We're taking you to the hospital." My heart raced. I turned slightly and saw Bailey standing nearby, tears streaming down her face. She had come to check on me when I didn't respond to her messages. Thank God she had a spare key. "He's going to be okay, right?" she kept asking them. The fear in her expression broke something inside me. I started trembling uncontrollably. They wheeled me out on a stretcher, and I overheard one EMT tell another something about a potential concussion and how fortunate I was. If Bailey hadn't stopped by, I could have slowly bled out on my own floor. At the hospital, they ran tests, kept me awake, and had me describe everything I could recall, which wasn't much. It wasn't until a detective visited that I discovered the rest. Television gone. Laptop gone. Cash, jewelry, everything valuable, vanished. My bedroom had been completely ransacked. He hadn't touched the bathroom at all. Not a single tile out of place. "We've had several cases like this recently," the officer explained. "Craigslist handyman enters with some story, knocks the person unconscious, takes their valuables. No fingerprints, always different contact numbers." They hadn't caught him. They weren't even certain if the same person committed all these crimes. Just the same method. I didn't have renter's insurance. I got a permanent scar on my cheekbone where I hit the floor. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst came afterward. I didn't leave my apartment for weeks. Ignored phone calls. Let food spoil. Started keeping a kitchen knife beside my bed. Purchased a security camera for the door and sometimes stared at the feed for hours, just waiting. Even now, years later, I flinch whenever someone knocks unexpectedly. I jump at footsteps in the hallway. I stopped trusting people entirely. Couldn't date. Couldn't invite anyone over. Bailey tried helping, she really did. But eventually she relocated for work, and after that, I was completely alone. The physical wounds healed mostly. I grew a beard to conceal the scar. But some damages can't be hidden. The quiet panic when strange noises break the night's silence. The compulsion to double-check every lock. The lingering guilt from trusting the wrong person. Last week, though, I finally put the knife back in the kitchen drawer. Not because I feel completely safe, but because I want to start trying. That has to be enough for now.